Welcome to Stories with Steph. This story is called Roxanne's Great Adventure. Victoria shares her home with one of her dearest friends, Roxanne. Roxanne is probably the most interesting roommate Victoria's ever had. She's certainly the most unusual looking friend and roommate that she's ever had. For you see, Roxanne is a 4-foot iguana. Every day when Victoria arrives home from work, Roxanne greets her warmly. They play hide and seek together, and then, as Victoria prepares Roxanne a meal of vegetables and fruits, Roxanne climbs onto the kitchen windowsill to bask in the sunlight. Afterwards, Roxanne takes a warm soak in the bathtub. Neither one can imagine a better relationship. One day, as Victoria arrived home from work, Roxanne jumped up to greet her. But Victoria brushed Roxanne off of her skirt and said, "There is no time to play today, Roxanne." Victoria had plans to join her parents for dinner and was running late. She rushed to prepare Roxanne's dinner. And she rushed to take a shower while Roxanne stood near the bathroom waiting for her turn to bathe. But Victoria had no time for that either. Roxanne followed Victoria, expecting to be petted on her long, scaly body, as she was every day. But today, Victoria paid little attention to her roommate. Instead of getting a nice belly rub, Roxanne found herself under Victoria's very wet towel. Victoria didn't even say goodbye as she flew out the door. Roxanne was feeling very lonely, but worse than that, she was bored. She wandered over to her favourite window to bask and think. Roxanne longed to be outdoors, enjoying the lush green grass, the tall willowy trees, and the hot, shining sun. She suddenly had an idea. She climbed off the windowsill and padded towards the front door. Standing on her hind legs, she peered out through the screen. Victoria was always warning Roxanne not to go near the screen, but today was different. Today, Victoria wasn't here to warn her. Today, Roxanne was bored and needed something to do. Roxanne stood watching the bees buzz from flower to flower and squirrels scamper across the lawn. It was all so exciting. As Roxanne leaned the weight of her body long against the door, there was a sudden loud crack. The screen tore away from the door, giving Roxanne just enough room to crawl through to the lovely world outside. Roxanne happily made her way across the porch and down a few steps. Before long, she found herself under a beautiful tree full of yummy-looking leaves. With her great claws, she began to climb the tree. She climbed and climbed and climbed until at last she was near the very top. Roxanne found a long, thick branch and stretched out lazily upon it. The sun was high and the breeze hot, just the way iguanas like it. An hour passed as Roxanne nibbled on the yummiest leaves, dozed off and on, and swayed smoothly with the branch that she lounged on. Nothing could be better than this, she thought. Roxanne was so content that she didn't even hear Victoria's car pull up right beneath the tree. Victoria arrived home with strawberries, Roxanne's favourite fruit. Stepping inside, she expected to be greeted with the usual iguana hug. Instead, Victoria found herself standing in the living room, all alone. "Roxanne, I'm home," she called out, but Roxanne did not appear. Victoria put the strawberries aside and began to look for her roommate. First, she checked all of Roxanne's favourite hiding spaces, the kitchen window, behind the couch, under the cushions. When she couldn't find her, she searched the rest of the house. Roxanne was nowhere to be found. Victoria couldn't believe it. Roxanne was gone. Why would she leave? Where would she go? Victoria had to find her. She quickly phoned her friend Amy. She'll know what to do, thought Victoria. Minutes later, Amy arrived with her daughter Jane. "Have you looked everywhere?" asked Amy. "Yes, all of Roxanne's favourite spots, and then the rest of the house," Victoria cried. While Amy calmed Victoria, Jane went outside. "Perhaps she's left a clue," the young girl Examining the porch, Jane noticed the broken screen. She searched for more clues. The breeze picked up a bit as Jane stepped off the porch. At the sound of rustling leaves, she looked upwards and began to notice a branch near the top where the tree was hanging lower than the others. She walked closer, and once under the tree, she could see Roxanne's tail. "Mum! Victoria! Come quick!" she shouted. "Look, it's Roxanne!" They all stood at the front of the tree, looking up as high as they could. Sure enough, they saw Roxanne's full belly, draped over a large branch and her tail hanging down. "What are we going to do?" Victoria shrieked. Amy looked thoughtful for a minute. We could climb up there and get her down," she suggested. The three looked back up to the tree and then at one another. The great height of the tree was more than a little frightening. "Well, maybe you just call her. She'll crawl down on her own," said Amy. "It's worth a try." "Roxanne, come down," called Victoria. Hearing her name, Roxanne looked down at them, took a bite from a leaf that she hadn't noticed earlier, and continued to bask in the warmth of the afternoon sun. Victoria was feeling very afraid. What if Roxanne falls? She wondered. She had to get her down right away. "I've got an idea," said Jane. "Why not call the fire department? They're always getting cats out of trees." The two women looked at each other. Why hadn't they thought of that? Victoria quickly dialed for the fire station and explained her problem to the fire chief. He agreed that the situation was rather unusual, but he would send help at once. Soon, 2 red fire trucks arrived with their sirens wailing, causing curious neighbours to come out of their homes. Victoria anxiously pointed to Roxanne as the fireman guided the ladder towards the branch that she was rested on. Climbing to the top, the fireman could see Roxanne but couldn't reach her. The ladder would have to be moved in closer. Roxanne eyed the man suspiciously and began to rise from her comfortable spot, moving further and further out of his reach. But the afternoon sun was setting, and Roxanne was beginning to feel cold. Looking down, she could see Victoria and suddenly missed her friend. With that, she settled back onto the branch, allowing the fireman to rescue her. The kind fireman gently lifted Roxanne off the branch and made his way back towards the ground. Reaching the last step, he placed Roxanne into Victoria's arms as the crowd clapped and cheered. Victoria hugged Roxanne tightly, thankful to have her back safe and sound. As they turned to go inside, Roxanne glanced up at the tree and then at Victoria. Her treetop adventure had been great, but Roxanne was glad to be going home with her dearest friend and roommate.